Hello and welcome to the Overlap Rugby podcast. This is episode number 63. Daragh, Shane.
Hello.
Two rugby lads from Ireland talking all things rugby. And for once, for a change, Ireland will be a heavy part of the show this afternoon, this evening. Mm-hmm. We're going to start obviously by predicting all of the week's games upcoming in the World Cup warm-ups while doing a little review of last week's games in it. And it will be painful recapping for us, obviously, after Ireland's catastrophic defeat at the hands of England and Twickenham. Mm-hmm. But we're going to do that in the context of previewing Ireland's game against Wales in Cardiff this weekend. Challenges just keep getting easier for Ireland, the number one side in the world. The next proposition.
It's true. Yeah.
We'll then move on to preview the other games this weekend. We'll talk about Georgia against Scotland. Obviously, Georgia got themselves up and going on Tuesday afternoon against the Southern Kings. They just about got a win in that one, but that's their first game out of the way, and Scotland managed to salvage a bit of pride and get the win against France in Murrayfield, so we'll talk about that game as well. Fiji are playing Tonga in Eden Park. We're going to do a quick preview of that game, and then we're going to give a mention to Uruguay and Brazil and Namibia against the Southern Kings before wrapping up the show with the rugby news of the week.
Sure.
If you do like the show, feel free to comment down below. That's the main thing. We do love reading your comments, even when we don't quite have the discipline to respond to them. And,
sure. And if it's your first time here, please do subscribe as well.
Absolutely.
And like and share as well. And all those
like and
things.
share. And what are you forgetting?
The bell.
You got to
ring the bell to be notified of any of the vids that we're publishing. But without any more ado, I suppose we'll get into it.
We will indeed, and we're going to start by previewing Wales against Ireland, which is taking place in the Millennium/Principality Stadium in August 31st, this coming Saturday, the last game in August, the last round of fixtures before we enter World Cup month. It's going to be on this Saturday. It's going to be at 2:30 local time, obviously, refereed by Rowan Watt. And Ireland's team seems to have leaked. We seem to know what their team is, but we don't quite, as of this moment on Wednesday evening, know what Wales's team will be. So, how do you see this one going?
Well, not great. Well, I suppose we better begin with, as I said, the post-mortem. And from Ireland's point of view, we obviously haven't seen Wales for a couple of weeks because their last fixture out was in Cardiff against England, and they cleaned house a fair bit based on their first showing. Really ironed out a lot of creases, hit their straps a little. Bigger had a great game. And really, they deserved to get that win just over England. They both had chances, but it was a good.
Wales were convincingly
they were better.
Side,
the better of the two, and deserved their win and got their warm-ups off to a good. Kind of got them back on track after the Twickenham embarrassment the week before. But little did we know that it didn't even qualify, because Ireland's Twickenham endeavours were pretty shocking and pretty harmful, I have to think, because he did pick, with a few exceptions, from the likes of James Ryan, Johnny Sexton obviously rested and stuff like that, but by and large that was quite a strong Ireland team to go out and try and make a bit of a statement, and they really didn't, or they'd made the wrong kind of one, because they were physically just nowhere near where England were at all, which is something that was hinted before the week, but just some of the inaccuracy in their play, and then some of the tameness of the defeat and the defence in essence was not encouraging.
There is mitigation. It was always, looking at it, it was always a scary game. It always had the potential to be a very, very dangerous game, because England obviously, August in the sunshine in Twickenham, they love it. It's perfect conditions for them. They had 2 games warm up. They were primed. They picked their best team, and they were just ruthless. They were just absolutely ruthless in the way that they tore Ireland apart. And I remember I was thinking, watching it in the first half, even as the game was sort of semi-tight, and then even the 8-7 minutes and thereafter, just every carry from them, they were playing with a sharpness and an efficiency, but a raw physicality that Ireland just weren't matching. And I was thinking, geez, they better slow down, they better start making errors, they better start giving away penalties, because we aren't stopping them if they keep playing like this.
The few times we were played into the game, it was by Ben Youngs being a bit loose in those exchanges, which he did kind of bail Ireland out, because otherwise they were, as you say, pretty accurate all across the park.
They were very good. Itoje, I thought, Tuolangi's getting a lot of the credit, but and he played brilliantly, don't get me wrong, but I thought Itoje
and Cruz I thought it was a great combination.
It was, but in particular I thought Itoje was just being they weren't living with him.
No.
Even in that first half, the physicality of him. Henderson was trying to get plays off, but Itoje was just everywhere. He's some athlete, and when he's on form, he's such a difficult guy to deal with, and has just an incredible amount of energy. He just throws himself into breakdown after line out maul after carry after tackle. Sublime player, and it really was. It was, from England's perspective, as flawless as it comes. They caused Ireland problems in the scrum. They completely nullified them at the line out. Their breakdown when Ireland had the ball was always slow and always attacked, and then when England had the ball, they were absolutely ruthless. One of the things that we have been sceptical on from England's perspective is getting the 10-12 axis with Ford and Farrell, but I kind of liked the variation because it allowed it put Tuilagi at 13, and I think they want Tuilagi at 13 because of what it allows Ford and Farrell to do. When Tuilagi is opposite the defensive 13, that 13 very usually has the job of shutting down and getting the ball to the outside, but they can't really do that when they're opposite a giant like Manu, and you saw that with Gary Ringrose. Gary Ringrose being sat down, he was on his flat feet, he was forced to stay and watch Tuilagi, which in turn just opened up the space for Ford and Farrell. And they didn't kick the ball. Like they distributed the two distributors. It was all a passing game, and they didn't kick the ball very much, which is what they would do with Slade at 13, which I still think will be their first choice.
Their go-to. It'll depend on who they're playing. They've obviously felt that to play this Ireland team this way, they did want to use Manu as the decoy that he was, because he'd caused such problems for us from 12 earlier in the year, that you knew that picking him at 13 does make that Ford Farrell option a bit more viable, if for no other reason that he does offer that physicality in the centre of the park when they're on the other side of the ball. But it does, as you say, he did get one try, but a lot of the tries were born of him sitting down. Both Gary and Bundy, really, they were both caught very narrow very often, and there was a disjointed nature to the Irish defensive line that was really just due to Manu's presence at any line he was running.
That said, every single time that England haven't selected Manu Tuilagi at 12, the opposition 12 has managed to run through and get a try, and that trend was continued.
Yes, that's true. Bundy did grab one. Yes, as futile as it ultimately was, but that is an interesting little tidbit. Yeah, no, definitely. I do think Ford Farrell is a secondary option to Farrell with Tuilagi at 12 and Slade outside, and for myriad different reasons, including the physicality, but also the extra kicking game, the extra left footer you have in the back line. It just I think it adds a lot more and is a bit neater and more balanced than I think Ford and Farrell sometimes. If a team were to front up and stop Tuilagi, I think they become a bit kind of overly deep and
I agree. I definitely agree. If Tuilagi stops being effective in that role, you got more options with Farrell and Slade, and I think that is what they'll go for first time. There is so much more we could talk about England. We could talk about how good Kyle Sinclair was. The back row were outstanding. The two flankers and Billy Vunipola.
All of them can steal, and then Itoje was getting steals as well. They made a nightmare at the breakdown.
Every area they were sublime, but as they're not playing this weekend, and we do have to move on, we are going to just speak on Ireland's performance, and we will get deeper into England and how good this was for their preparation in previewing the next game that they have. But obviously from Ireland's perspective, everything that was good about England you felt was bad about Ireland. I feel like that there is a lot of process stuff that you can get into with this performance. There's a lot you can talk about, every functional area that Ireland like to pride themselves on.
Line out, defence, all pretty bad.
Accuracy wise, indeed. Every single thing that they did wrong. But I just feel like in the context of this game, it you can't really even read too much into that when you're just not at the physical and seemingly emotional and mental peak. It's a bit of a cliche, there wasn't enough passion in the performance thing. It's something that you hear these sort of vapid pundits maybe make that point a little bit, but it's definitely something that was missing from Ireland's game at the weekend. Is just being
it's rare you see them so toothless in Twickenham of all places as well. But then the World Cup warm-ups are ones where you do see kind of random performances like that are a bit shorn of passion. It
was a bit French-like. They were completely out of the game, and they will be worried just by their inability to handle that physical edge. And I think that's the first thing that they need to get right. Rather than filling the players' heads with a bunch of process stuff about you did XYZ wrong, your spacing was wrong here. Just so much would be solved, and you would find out so much more in terms of what's wrong process-wise if Ireland were able to match that physical edge and not go backwards in the tackle, not go backwards when they have the ball, play with a bit of pace, speed and aggression, and none of that was there. They looked completely outmatched. They looked kind of like a tier 2 team, just blown away by the physicality of England. And certainly, as you say, the starting team, guys like Josh van der Fleer, who you've never seen,
Manu,
bundled off just every single time. Josh was manning Manu when he was coming short, and he was just no match for him. And likewise with the whole pack versus Maro Itoje, they were just going backwards and backwards and backwards. Yeah. And it's just the kind of thing that snowballed. There wasn't a lot of leadership out there, and leadership in terms of making plays to get them back into the game.
One of the few positives, curiously, and it's going against leadership, but Ross Byrne actually I thought went okay. Despite all that, like he had no, as you say, leadership there to kind of dig him out of it, and he did seem to keep his head all right, but he was obviously, when the pack is being outmatched to that extent, it's not going to fall on the 10 really, other than try and kick them out of trouble, which he did once or twice, but it was it was all a losing effort really. A few things concerning things like Murray looking very soft from 9 and then going off. Like, some of that is to do with, obviously they just had one game against Italy and then 2 more weeks of intense training in Portugal. A lot of these
guys didn't play
so then straight out to Twickenham against a kind of primed England team. And they're definitely at different stages of their development in the run into this World Cup, and that can't be understated. But at the same time, I've never seen a team ship 57 points the month before the tournament and then go on to win the tournament or have a great tournament. It's not a great sign.
Generally that doesn't happen, and the fact that they were so far beyond them is obviously concerning. It is a factor that England and Twickenham in that kind of mood can just be a very dangerous proposition for anybody. But when they slow down, and there were moments where they weren't quite right, when Ben Youngs was making errors to leave Ireland in the game, to not get anything off was massively concerning, to not seemingly win a contact or get an offload away outside of that first opening couple of minutes.
First 10 minutes. Carney impressed by throwing some passes and getting an offload away. Stockdale's chip and chase obviously is still a good play in him that we can go to for the Larmer score. Bundy Akik popping up with a great finish. That's encouraging as well. A bit defiant, but it's good to see that he still has that in him, which is basically what he does for Connacht all season long.
I definitely don't disagree with that, and Ian Henderson had 1 or 2 as well. But just in general, not to be at that physical edge and just to be manhandled. I mean, I thought a great summary for the game was Cian Healy going into contact by himself and getting literally picked up by Maro Itoje and swung around like a rag doll. Like, that's Cian Healy. That's one of our main
sources to go forward,
and raw physicality, and just getting completely handled by Maro Itoje after doing a load of fitness work, which is you can say heavy-legged, but definitely a concern. It's not. I don't think it's necessarily terminal, but it's definitely
one thing. Cian Healy's injury is one of the worst takeaways from it. He went over with a sprained ankle, is reported, but it's just the fact that he's done so much injury to those ankles before, and the amount of pressure that a loose head prop is putting on them anyway. That is a concern, because we've often stated on this podcast that Cian Healy is fairly vital to Ireland's chances going forward. So we'd hope that he'll be all right. But things like all the performances from Peter O'Mahony, heavy-legged does cover some of it, but like you're saying, to be absolutely not at the races entirely is deeply concerning. That being said,
it's the difference is to not be able to get plays off when you're under that kind of pressure. I mean, Scotland shipped 31 consecutive points against an England team in a similar kind of mood, and they kind of showed in that second half just how brittle that English confidence can be. If you run off a couple of tries and catch them sleeping, you can rattle them, and they can become a different team, and then they can let you into the game. But you can only really do that if you can execute the plays. And I thought the most concerning aspect of the game, bar none, was when Ireland were down. They were attempting to exit wide from deep with a passing game, and on a few occasions it was loose passing. It never got outside first centre. The skills seemed to be deficient, and that was definitely not good. Like, even when you're under pressure, you have to be able to bail yourself out, be able to execute simple skills plays.
I think I'm remembering one in particular where they had CG at first or second receiver and had him to run pull back past to Ross Byrne, and he just pulled it back behind them to create a scramble in our own 22.
That was a constant theme, and that was definitely concerning. It just means that Ireland have to be you have to get Ireland at that very physical peak where they're competing with teams where they're pumped up for the game. Like, the best Ireland teams are savage. And that was the biggest difference, I thought, actually.
Very little savagery on display in all of it.
Well, what I was going to say is it was one of the points that Joe had made, was the turnaround that New Zealand did against
Australia
against Australia, exactly. The week turnaround and how different it was. And Joe had said, they did that by taking out a bunch of established players, and that was his takeaway. But my biggest takeaway was from that game was just the difference in physicality and the difference in sort of attitude in that second game. The All Blacks were hurting the Wallabies.
Yeah, they were mean.
They were mean. They were hitting them beyond the ruck. They were doing semi-illegal things, but they were not having the Wallabies run over them in Eden Park. And it's that sort of attitude. You do forget, at times, this is a fight, especially up front in these top-tier games. You're not in the game if you can't be in the fight.
Yeah.
And Ireland weren't in the fight at the weekend, and England were in no mood to let them off the hook.
Yeah. So it's a pretty depressing drubbing, makes for depressing reading. As far as an Irish fan's concerned, 57-15 is unprecedented, records broken or records equalled in terms of defeat. It is somewhat anomalous in terms of just you won't expect us to be as you say, just detached from seemingly where your headspace needs to be for a game again. I expect we won't see that again at all, even in these warm-up games. Even though it's Cardiff again this time, I'd expect to see more fight from
just a bit more attitude
from the players involved,
guys who we know can make tackles, making tackles.
That was shocking. 22 missed tackles in the first half.
34
overall. It's you can't go into an England fixture with that at all. But it's in terms of who they've selected this week. The concerns you raise about the catch pass, I'd expect that to be slightly better this week, based on the combinations. Even looking at the back row, it's not an established back row that we've gone with at all. But this is based off a leaked team now. This hasn't actually been named officially, but seemingly it's going to be.
The rugby pass snakes seem to have got it again.
They always seem to have the scoop. So the back row seemingly is Byrne at 6, Peter O'Mahony shifted to 7. Which I'm okay with. He plays a lot like a 7 anyway.
So does Craig Byrne anyway.
So it's two jacklers. And then Jack Conan, ball playing number 8, which is something I've wanted in the team for quite a while. I can't stand the fact that CJ is in the Ireland team for so long.
Yeah, that back row is a lot of fun. It is also almost all... there's no real workhorse in it. It's much more playmakers. So there's a workhorse deficiency there.
But there is in the row, though.
In the row, I was going to say. In the row, that it's sort of made up for by the two most physical guys we have, in Ian Henderson and James Ryan. Niall Scannell gets the nod at hooker after Rory Best and co getting a huge lynching.
Still questions over that line out. That means that the hooker is going to be Munster, and we have an Ulster and a Leinster lock.
It's amazing how quickly it can all fall apart at the line out. Just a few different things. There was uncertainty everywhere in the Irish line out last week, and Rory Best got a lot of stick for it. There were some weak throws from him.
But there was also some questionable lifts and some weird timings on some of the stuff.
There was just weird calls. There was a line out on our own line when there was all kinds of deception and manipulation, and Irish players running from front to the back to the front to the back. And then at the end, the move was a throw to the back of the line out. And the Irish boys are running, and Rory Best throws sort of a loopy, slow throw. And literally, while the Irish have been doing all that, George Cruz is just standing in one position. And then as soon as he threw it, he was like, oh, that's to me. Up he went and caught it. And it was a nonsense. Yeah. And there was definitely a lot of that going on. And then when Sean Cronin came on and obviously had that overthrow for Cowan Dickey that he got criticised for, that was actually entirely on Devon Toner. The call was to the front of the line out, and it was for Peter O'Mahony, and Peter O'Mahony was springing and he didn't get enough height because Dev was the guy in behind him on the lift, and Dev, who called the line out, didn't get there quick enough, didn't lift him high enough, and then the ball just scooted over the top of his hands. It was an assertive, pretty good throw from Cronin, and because he didn't get high enough, ball went flying over the line out, and Cowan Dickey catches it and scores
for the second time in a few weeks.
And gift for Cowan Dickey. And then Cronin's confidence is shot, and the next line out he throws is quite slow. It's a much slower throw, and it gets picked off. Yeah. And it's just this is the kind of thing that can snowball when there isn't effective leadership and playmaking going on in the team, which there wasn't that day, and that is a concern. They have to
be sharper in all of those
guys
areas.
Have to make plays. Yeah. It is why the team that has been leaked is the full Munster front row to go with the back five that we named: Kilcoyne, Scannell, and Ryan. And the back line has been Marmee and Carty, the Connacht combination at halfback, with Aki and Farrell in the centre, and Stockdale on the left, Conway on the right, and Will Addison
getting run out. Apparently,
got a chance if he plays well. He's got a chance to make the squad.
There's definitely more scope for playing ball in that team entirely. Not just because of Addison at fullback, which is someone we've talked about, playmakers at fullback and stuff. We've done that in depth on this podcast. But also things like I think those two halfbacks are quick anyway, Carty
Yeah.
and Marmion, and I think there's such a seminal role in the number 8 being able to distribute that really stalls Ireland in many intangible ways, where sometimes the blame for the move breaking down gets shifted further along. But I think there's the fact that CJ is in there in such a defensive role and in such a predictable ball in hand role.
Yeah.
He doesn't offer any link between forward and back. That's all falls on 9 and 10, which in turn makes us predictable.
Yeah.
Whereas in years gone by, when you had Jamie Heaslip, who's a total footballer who can do the physical enforcer role and the ball playing skills, now we have a more of a toss up where it's like, well, do we want to play ball? We'll go with Jack Cohen, but that may sacrifice some physicality. We'll go with CJ, but it's an either or situation seemingly, which is why I think Jack Cohen is primed to take that jersey from CJ, because I think he's capable of being more physical than
I definitely like the dexterous nature of that back row, and I think it actually makes for a decent back row battle this weekend. Obviously, Wales, you don't know what they're going to do. It's their last game. They could go full throttle on it and get the big boys out, who I believe are Moriarty and Navidi and Tipuric. I think that's probably their full back row, and I think if they do those boys, you have some serious dexterous athletes in there.
In those two back rows then as well. Because Navidi and Tipuric are fast.
It probably makes sense because their whole back, the two flankers from Ireland are great breakdown operators, and that's probably more crucial than just tacklers, which is what you would prefer to see against England, obviously, which they picked in Josh and CJ. They just didn't deliver. So those guys are the guys that we're going to be throwing into that cauldron of a breakdown battle against Alan Wynne and his troops.
Cardiff is always a cauldron.
I can't remember the last time they were schooled at the breakdown in Cardiff. It just doesn't happen. So that's the task for Ireland. From Wales's perspective, what would you do? Are you picking the full team?
I don't know. Yeah, there's still potential to experiment a little bit. They still have to answer who's behind Biggar at 10. So that's one of the main question marks they have with Wales. Like they could, because it's in Cardiff and they want to get the win, roll out Biggar again, and he could have another Rolls Royce of a performance and look great. But that still doesn't answer the question of who's going on the plane with him.
I think Biggar has answered the question of who's the starting 10. It's Dan Biggar.
Yeah.
And now I think you're in that little scramble between Jared Evans and Reece Patchell. Personally, I know there's a lot of hype around Jared Evans. I'd love to see Patchell get given another go.
I favour Patchell as well, just based on even experience, and just I've seen him do more in years gone by.
He's done it in a Welsh jersey.
He's done it in a Welsh jersey. He's definitely done it in a Scarlet's jersey. He's more of a like-for-like change with Anscombe, who they're obviously without, in that he can play 15 and 10, and as a 10 tends to take it to the line more than Biggar, which is what they were enjoying with the Anscombe option as well. Yeah. So I think Patchell makes a bit more sense, but then we're just not privy to anything that's going on in training, don't know what his form's like, haven't seen him.
Yeah, but that's the point, is that the game is the real test, and that's what you'd like to see Patchell get given a go. Outside of that, though, I think they're going to go for their settled pack. They will, like Ireland's front row that they've picked isn't their full front row, but they are very good technical scrummagers.
Yes, that's true.
All three of them, the Munster front row. So I think Wales, their scrum has been a little iffy. I think
they may roll out.
I think they're going to go with their full team, which I guess would be probably. Is it Nicky Smith at the moment, or no? Rob Evans, Ken Owens, and then Thomas Francis. I think
Thomas Francis or Samson Lee, depending on whether how much they feel the scrum is a dogged battle. They'll go for either.
If they go for Samson Lee in there, actually, that could be a very interesting scrum battle, because what they have been picking, and then obviously Dylan Lewis and the likes coming off the bench, they have been having a rough time with the scrum. Back-to-back games against England, a rough time.
Sure.
And these boys can scrummage as well. The Ireland guys, not quite as much power, but quite a good bit of technique. So it'll be a good test for them in that area.
Well, there's power coming from behind, in that this is probably the strongest scrummaging second row partnership that Ireland can select.
That's true as well.
Ryan and Ian Henderson. So we'll see how that battle plays out. It's definitely intriguing. I don't know who they'll pick to partner Alan Wynne. I thought Ball put his hand up in the last performance hugely. I thought he was great. But they may opt for someone else, because they do have options. Corey Hill, or Adam Beard, I think, as well, is still up there. In whether he'll be on the plane or not, I still don't know what their plans for the rows are, other than that Alan Wynne is a shoo-in.
Yes, indeed.
But so it's I would expect them to name a strong team, like almost a full team. Debatable. They may give the likes of Halfpenny a run out, or I don't know. But
they might throw Liam Williams out. Halfpenny missed the last game. I would think that they will go with their settled backline this time. They'll go with Hadley Parks and Jay Davis in the centre,
with Liam Williams a full back, Josh Adams one wing, George North the other.
Yeah, I think. They have gone with that already.
Yeah.
You could see them go for like a Scott Williams. Is he going to get in there? It's hard to tell.
We obviously know Hadley Parks and Jay Davis are their two starters, but is it going to be Owen Watkin or is it going to be Scott Williams or is it going to be both?
Yeah,
maybe not.
I would like to see. I'd actually, in hindsight, having said all of that, they're going to go with their full team. There probably is scope for them to pick the walk, especially in this home game. Maybe they'll do it in Dublin. It's hard to tell, obviously, but maybe they go for Williams and Watkin. Either way, I think main thing that they're looking to answer is that 10 question. A couple of questions on the squad, but winning in Cardiff is crucial.
Yeah,
testing their scrum, winning the line out, winning the breakdown, and then obviously getting another win on the board. Those are the priorities for Wales.
Definitely. Yeah. And to be honest, based on all evidence thus far, I expect that's probably how it's going to go.
Yep.
Much as I would love to see Ireland book the trend and kind of come to Cardiff and set things straight again and get their World Cup prep back in order.
I do like the Ireland team that's been leaked. I think there was some promise last week in the sense of the distribution game from Rob Kearney that they had been working on one or two things. They did get an early nice try off, played a bit off counter-attack. Addison's an exciting player. I feel like they'll be more at a physical edge than they were last week. There'll be scope for them to compete with Wales, maybe for the
just in the collision zone.
Game. In the collision zone, exactly. It'll be a contest, but especially given the team they've picked, Wales might just be a little too wily for them.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a new look to the Ireland team. It's definitely a new system. Even.
James Ryan's a real factor in this game, though. He's you wouldn't sleep on him. He's a brilliant player. He's in the elite caliber.
He's in that Itoje mold where he does have a peculiar energy about him, where he does pop up in the 70th minute with crazy physical plays.
So if he can perform, obviously that's going to be a game changer for Wales. But I would feel that Wales just have the bit more nous, the bit more edge,
and the home advantage as well, which seems to be pivotal in these warm-up games thus far. For all concerned.
We haven't had an away win yet,
apart from for the Jersey Reds.
That's
and Leinster.
And Leinster. Not an away tier in a tier 1 game.
No,
we haven't had an away win in these warm-ups. So I would suspect that will continue. Wales, despite Augustin Pichot's
aspersions or
derision. They are the number 1 team in the world, and I suspect they will see off Ireland in this one,
probably,
to set up a nice rematch in Dublin.
Yeah, I dare say that's the fact. So I suppose we'll move on because we have other games to chat about, and one very, very interesting game that's coming up this weekend in Tbilisi is Georgia v Scotland, and again we're just going to say kudos to Scotland for accepting such a warm-up game, because it's really a good challenge for Georgia, who obviously have Wales, Fiji and Australia, so I think Scotland are a good little prep for them in terms of they're going to bring a dynamic game, fast game that they're going to have to struggle to contain.
Georgia are going to have to deal with that, so they've got a double header actually. They're going back to Murrayfield next week. So it's going to be great for them. It's the first visit of a tier 1 side to Tbilisi,
and long overdue.
They're going to be playing it in the Dynamo Arena in Tbilisi. That's a stadium with 54,000 capacity, which I suspect will be full.
It's on this Saturday, and it's at 5 o'clock Irish time, so I don't know what Tbilisi time is, but that's our time.
Pascal goes there, will be reffing. No major objections to him.
No.
Both sides have had shaky enough starts to their World Cup prep. Georgia just got started at the weekend. And,
even on Tuesday.
Excuse me.
So it was a quick enough turnaround for them, but they did to name somewhat different team. They were obviously shorn of a few of their key playmakers. Obviously, Lobzanidze for one.
The two halfbacks actually were different.
Both halfbacks, and I think the front row are all under 20s graduates from last year. Apparently, someone was saying, which is very impressive because they were on top of most of the scrums. They lost one scrum that I can recall. But they played against the Southern Kings, got their World Cup prep underway. It was interesting. They at one point they were 20 points to 5 down, and they only really got back into it in the 60th minute. They proved too strong for the Southern Kings in the end, but it was concerning for them how some of the looseness that in their own game invited pressure, and they weren't able to contain. Like the Southern Kings can catch pass. They're a pretty soft side overall. We know them pretty well from the Pro 14, but one thing they can do is they can catch pass and execute a try when there's little intensity in the game. And Georgia didn't bring their own kind of levels of intensity, got blitzkrieg by them, and were behind and having to chase a game. And it was interesting to see how they went about it. So with
the answer was slowly.
It's
and not the ideal circumstance.
Eventually, they managed to nick the win in the last. I think it was the 78th minute they took the lead. And then they nearly coughed it up again. One thing that was dreadful was their line-out. Their scrum, we know, is formidable. Their line-out was pretty poor.
They were playing a young hooker who they hadn't played before, I think. I'm not sure if he was uncapped, but he certainly wasn't a regular starter for them. And that definitely showed. The big main news from it, though, is that the open side flanker, who is named Georgian Sutskoredzi. I absolutely butchered that, I'm absolutely sure of it. But this guy was very much a revelation in the last year in terms of Georgian play. They've been putting him on the wing as a loose forward, and his carrying game has been superb.
Ruining the Rugby Europe opposition.
They were exiting with him on the wing, moving the ball out to him. He was such a dynamic ball carrier, and is such a dynamic ball carrier, that he was breaking through the line and being just a very effective ball in hand exit machine for them. Was causing defences all kinds of horrors, and was one of their secret weapons ahead of the World Cup. And appears to have picked up a very bad injury.
It was nasty. It happened. It just as because I think they went 10-0 up. Did the Southern Kings? They did after 7 minutes, and it was in the build-up play for that try that they got on 7 minutes that he went down, and he was helped off by two assistants. Looked to be not putting any weight on one leg. It looked like a pretty bad injury.
I believe that it is. And that's obviously massively disappointing, and for a side that, while they do have a lot of big men, that they don't have quite as many men as skilled and as dynamic as him, and that's definitely a major blow ahead of the World Cup. And you hate to see injuries like that in these warm-up games. That sucks. It is good that they came back from behind.
It is,
but we're going to learn ultimately a lot more about them in their game this weekend against Scotland, who have gotten their own campaign a little back on track with a victory.
A good win over France. It got a little loose in that second half, but they were the ones who grabbed the try.
It was quite stop-start. What I will say for it is that I actually, even though it was earlier, I had been working earlier in the day, so I watched the Ireland game first, and then I came in and watched that game, which I had recorded, and it was refreshing to see Scotland, even in a loose game where they weren't getting that much off, just how entertaining and dangerous they are. Just in terms to sort of contrast them with Ireland when they were beaten up front and they weren't quite getting things on up front. There was no danger to it. Whereas with Finn Russell, there's just always danger. He was putting in these deliciously inviting kicks. Not all of them were coming off, not most of them really, but there was such danger to him, and he has just a wonderful vision. And it's going to be a handful for the Georgian defence and any defence dealing with him, because he sees the game on a whole other level. And when, as we saw earlier in the Six Nations in the Calcutta Cup, when he gets his hands hot and he's just seeing the game, he can tear any team to pieces. And he was very close to doing so against France in this game.
It didn't quite come off. I mean, he did catch Raka on the turn a few times, actually, with a few little dinks over the top. He was definitely exploiting that wing. But a few decent passes as well. Like, obviously Finn is an exciting player to watch. He is box office. But I thought a few aspects. I thought their backline was a bit more balanced even this week, even though Horn obviously did throw a horrendous intercept, but their centres were less porous than they were the week
Chris Harris
before.
Probably had his most positive outing.
Really good, and took his try really well. Lovely little line inside Van Mahina, catching Van Mahina sleeping, which is something that we can always do. If you just watch Van Mahina for 80 minutes of rugby, you'll find him sleeping at some point. Just fly there. But I thought Harris was very positive. He's a bit more physical in that jersey than Hugh Jones. There's question marks about Hugh Jones, like I know he's been box office for them, but they do leak tries. I think he's
under pressure, 100%.
They do leak tries when he's there, and they just are a deficit as far as physicality is concerned, whereas they weren't this time around. Even though you think Horn isn't actually the most physical guy, he was taking it to the line and winning a few contacts in that 12 mould. He's not like Damien Delindy or someone, but he's going to do his job and try and go forward with it. So I was more positive. It was a more balanced look to that Scotland team for sure. And I thought,
but it was scrappy, and it was. If France were not quite at the same intensity level, and neither were Scotland, so they were kind of having a bit of fun. It'll be a good game for them going into the Lions Den, as it were, in Tbilisi, where I can't remember the last time in a big stadium in Tbilisi that Georgia did lose a game.
It's tough to remember. It's probably Romania many years ago.
When was the last time Romania won away in Georgia? They occasionally got a game off them.
Decade maybe. They just never play there. Like no, as you say, no tier 1 side will go there, travel there, and play them, and they should.
Yeah, so it'll be very interesting to see if Scotland cope with the physicality of it.
And just the noise of it. Those Georgians get loud, especially in Tbilisi. It'll be a bit of a cauldron, and it'll be a bit heavy underfoot maybe as well, more so than Murrayfield. So you don't know. Maybe the passes don't stick, but maybe they do. The thing about Scotland's style of play more so than Georgia's is if it does click even once or twice and they grab 14 points, that like Scotland to this Scotland team, 14 points can be got in a matter of a couple of minutes.
For sure.
For this Georgia team, it's more likely that it'll take 30 minutes.
Georgia very much need to control the game to win it.
Yeah.
They do have the means to do it. I tell you what, Willem Nel was a revelation in terms of fixing the Scottish scrum last week against France. He came in.
Different challenge this week though.
Yeah, what a serious challenge. Willem Nel's a great scrummager, but those Georgians are almost on another level.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, that's an exciting battle, and I'd love to see them pick Nell. I think if they don't pick Nell, they're in real trouble.
Yeah,
but I actually love to see them pick Nell and see his tight head scrummaging credentials really tested.
Yeah,
which they would most assuredly be. Obviously, Scotland have had their own injury concerns. Sam Skinner appears to be gone from the World Cup. He went off after a very positive game. Which is obviously very sad and disappointing for them. And Tommy Seymour hobbled off pretty early as well.
And
I don't know what the story is with him. But in general, their big guys are clicking. I thought Finn Russell and Stuart Hogg were both great. I actually thought Stuart Hogg played well in the bad game in the defeat against France.
Yeah, he did. He was up for it. He had a lovely touch in the second half of the game just gone as well. A little chip and chase and Gallagher that nearly yielded a try, but it didn't. There was a lot of that in that second half. They were both playing with ambition, but it just wasn't quite coming off.
And from Georgia's perspective, it's a good little bit of prep for the speed and an attacking vigour that both Australia and Fiji are going to provide.
And a bit of Wales, I'd say, as well. Wales will try and up the pace on them. Yeah, for sure.
So they're going to have to get used to that. And I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be in terms of intrigue. Can the Scottish pack stand up to Georgia? Can they prevent them from controlling the game? And then from Georgia's perspective, can they take a tier 1 pack and take them to that dark place that they take all of the Rugby Europe teams, pin them back in their own half, hold the ball, crush them, force a yellow card.
That's the other thing about Finn's game. He loves to try things, and like as great as that is and ambitious as it is, if it doesn't yield a try, a lot of times it yields a scrum. And if Nell is getting bullied at the scrum time, then suddenly Finn's trying things every play is maybe not a great thing for them if they're just slightly not coming off. And then
the Georgian defence is a big job though. Like their defence, generally speaking, they probably leak too many soft yards against not great opposition. And Scotland have a very good attack, so it's going to be good learnings for them in terms of shutting down properly good attacks. And it could be a harsh one for them if Scotland get it off.
Could be. It could be a welcome one if Scotland teach them that lesson. It probably won't like completely damage them. It's just something that'll be good, because Georgia live in this world where they just don't know. They're better than everyone they play, so they don't actually know how good they are because they never play anyone at that level. And you can see sometimes they get their prep wrong. Like going into that Italy game completely cold, which was like probably their biggest game of their history last autumn, when they were going to Italy to take on Italy for the chance to prove that they're better than Italy, and they went in cold, obviously off the back of months of prep and bigging this game up, whereas Italy had a run out with Ireland in Chicago the week before where they shipped a load of tries, but they at least got a hit out and then were sharper come game day than Georgia.
Exactly.
And so this time they've obviously opted to play the Southern Kings midweek and then have Scotland over and then do a double header. So they're obviously taking learnings from recent their recent failings, but which is good. But they still live in a point of unsurety where they're streets above, just way beyond everyone in the Rugby Europe Championship that they're a part of, and then even in their friendly games, and more often they just don't tend to play teams on their level at all, and so they just don't quite know where they're at. So
this double header against Scotland is going to be great for them in that way. They are a bit like Ireland in the sense that for a big game they can raise their game. And it is a big education for them ahead of this World Cup, because they have some tough games coming up in that pool. It's a really tough pool
playing
for
against
them.
Teams that want to play fast, which is what they don't want to do.
Well,
so
it's the big question. Can they shut them down? Like Spain want to play fast. It's obviously at a much lower level, but Spain get nothing off against Georgia pretty consistently. They just get... Like they can beat Romania, they can cause basically anyone else in that competition problems, and they come up against Georgia and it's just flatline, nothing ever. And that's what Georgia would hope to do to their opposition. So it'll be an education. It'll be interesting. It's a wonderful clash of styles as a rugby match.
Definitely.
It's got that intrigue to it. And I'm very curious to see what happens out in Tbilisi. I'm excited. I love the idea of Tbilisi hosting big matches with big crowds, that when the tier 1 teams can go to them, and maybe this is an example of a fixture that could be in the Six Nations in many years to come.
Well, there's that talk too, but for sure we'll be watching, and it's definitely interesting.
Predictions, by the way, just before we wrap that one up. So it's such a hard one to predict.
I don't know. I'm torn. I'm thinking Scotland will probably shock them with a few early tries and then won't recover quite. But I expect Georgia will cause them some problems. I think as good a scrummager as Nell is, expect him to get bullied once or twice by that Georgian pack.
I find it very curious. Like
there's more. Just the fact that Scotland can potentially be bad for so long in this game and go unpunished, maybe by Georgia's not accruing enough points.
Not scoreboard punished, but punished in other ways
for sure. But Scotland's style is such, and Finn's style is such, that they can create something like that. And should it click for even a 10-minute period, that can mean 3 tries, and that's an unassailable lead for this Georgia team. But
I think maybe this is me straddling the middle ground again, but maybe a narrow win for Scotland. Maybe a comeback win for Scotland.
That'll be fun. Have Georgia cause them all kinds of worry.
I feel like Georgia, it's a big game for them, but it's not in the same pressure building sense that the Italian one was. Like, it's still a World Cup warm-up. There are bigger games to come, and yet it's still a chance for them to show what they can do. And I feel like they're going to be the right kind of up for this game.
Bigged up for it. I'd love to see Georgia get the win, to be honest. For
Beko Gorgodze running over boys for fun. That's what you want to see. And it can absolutely happen. That pack are vicious. So excited. Not sure what's going to happen, but excited to watch it
for sure. I suppose we'll park that one there and move on. And there's a double header happening in Eden Park this weekend. Other news as well with it. It's also on Saturday. We have Fiji playing Tonga in probably the big fixture of it, and I think that's at 4:00. But it's a double header, and Samoa are playing New Zealand Heartland 15 beforehand. And the Heartland 15 is kind of an entity that the All Blacks have, where it's kind of based on the players from Divisions 1 and 2 in the
Divisions 2 and 3,
even in the Mitre 10, which is kind of, obviously, it's a good little gateway for certain players of a level. I don't know what level they'll be at. We don't know what the team is. We haven't seen it.
It's impossible to know that level they'll be at, and it's not really the most important thing. It's a hit out for the Samoans ahead of their World Cup, exactly, and they've cut their squad a little bit. The Samoans themselves, they've actually brought a bunch of guys in and let a bunch of guys go, and they've got a pretty strong looking 34-man squad, which they'll obviously have to whittle down somewhat. But it's Tusi Pisi's back in there, and that 10 battle is going to be fascinating. Obviously, he's held that jersey for years, but Sayateni has been promising. Great to see Tim Nanai Williams back in the mix.
He's obviously backs where he belongs, instead of being thrown in 10 as they've had to do in a few times.
They got depth at 10, and then obviously your stalwarts. You've got Ray Lilo and Leua and Fonatia as centre options.
Correctly listed as centres as well, as opposed to being played on the wing as some of them were during the PNC.
Indeed, and obviously that loose forward combination of TJ Ioane, Jack Lamb and Chris Vui is pretty class. So I would actually I'd hope Samoa will pick their strongest side, and I would hope that they get a confidence building big win. That would be nice. Obviously, young Kiwis, you don't know, they could be class.
They could light it up, and that would be worrying for Manu Samoa. But it's definitely a good thing, and it's a good celebration of just Pacific Island rugby as well in Eden Park, which is good. But then
got to give New Zealand rugby a shout out. I know they get a lot of stick for stealing players, etc., etc.
They do a lot for.
They do try
to
and celebrate the
Pacific nations. 100%. So, and this is a good example of it. Eden Park playing host to the three
Pacific.
All three. And then New Zealand, the All Blacks providing a team, albeit a kind of hodgepodge Heartland 15 that we don't really know anything about. We're providing opposition for them to play against.
100%.
That's great. And then the other game is Fiji Tonga, which probably there's more intrigue in this one than the other one. Certainly we know a bit more having watched the PNC. Like Tonga, very big, probably the biggest of the Pacific nation sides in terms of physicality and just weight. Like their forwards are big, and they do have quite a proficient pick and go game that has yielded some tries for them.
They have some huge guys in that pack.
They do.
Even Sam Lousey's a massive player. Didn't feature too much in the Pacific Nations, but he's back in. Steve Maffey's back in.
Yeah.
It's heft. It's more heft.
Strong.
It's more heft than skill. I would worry a little bit about the halfback combination. Johnny 5/10 hasn't really impressed me.
He wasn't great in the PNC, to be fair.
And I just think we've obviously the Tongan team has been announced, but we haven't seen the Fiji team as of yet.
No.
It'd be their first hit out since they've named their 31-man squad. But you would expect just any combinations that they want to throw out there. I would think that it being a warm-up game of relative low intensity, it's to be a dry track, that they're going to go for something close to a full side. So I think we're likely to see your Radradras and your Bodias in the centre and Ben Volavola and whoever they're going to go for at 9. It's really a lottery at this point.
For a fullback as well.
Vitakani is the front runner for me anyway. And then Tuisova on one wing and maybe Nkosi on the other.
Nkosi, Gonova, that's leaving Gonova.
Any number of that backline could be serious, and exactly. Just looking forward to seeing all of them out there. Kunatani in the back row has been one of the revelations.
Just the last game we saw in Eden Park was obviously Bledisloe 2, and that was a washout. If that were the case, it would bring Tonga into the game a bit more, but we've looked at the forecast and apparently that's not what the case is. It's meant to be around 16-17 degrees and relatively dry, albeit with high humidity, but a low chance of precipitation, which is all...
Also, high humidity is something the Islanders are just so
well used to. So I'd imagine it'd be a drier track than obviously they had for Bledisloe 2. And I expect then that Fiji will just have a bit too much for them in terms of speed.
Just a bit. I would expect Fiji to cut loose on them. Assuming they haven't gone cold in the weeks that they haven't been playing.
Yeah. Well, things like scrum time will be a challenge because Samoa got a few plays off them at scrum time in the PNC as well, which is an area they've been working on and improving in. But it's still not their go-to strength. So if they're a little bit cold,
not built like props.
No, they're not really. So there is that avenue for inroads for Tonga. But overall, when you're looking at winning conditions, there are a lot of them for Fiji, whereas there are only a few that would be a surprise, a genuine surprise should Tonga come and upset the apple cart.
It would be definitely, for me, it would be a bigger shock if Tonga beat Fiji than Georgia beating Scotland.
Probably
100%. Tonga were quite unimpressive, if we're being honest.
To be fair, compared, and they do have some World Cup pedigree. Do Tonga? They've got some skills. Obviously, France.
They've beaten France. That's true.
They have World Cup history, and compared to some of those sides they brought to World Cups in the past, I think they're probably lacking in a few more departments this time.
They just haven't got that attacking game to go toe to toe with Fiji, and their defense isn't all of that great either
for the size.
I would expect Fiji to get things off and to settle into their rhythm of attacking footy, and to get some tries off and put on a show in Eden Park as they so want to do.
That would be nice.
Fiji are awesome, and their attack is up there with any of the tier 1 sides. They are beautiful to watch when they get in flow, and I would be hoping to see on a dry track that nice offloading game of Nakarawa playing guys into the game, Mata getting into a bit of space, Kunatani getting into a bit of space, Yato
also in a bit of space. They're all awesome.
They're all in space. Running great lines, and their attack is a wonderful flow of instinctive offensive offloading rugby that few defences when it comes off can handle, and I don't know that the Tongans will be at all ready for it.
Not at all.
They just don't play at pace, Tonga.
No, they don't. They're quite slow around the corner as well. Like that is where in defence, even though they're big, they can get moved around and then opened up. So exactly, you'd expect a patient outing from Fiji where they just don't be thrown around too recklessly early and get their fundamentals right and then go to that game. That should be enough to really put up a score against this Tongan side. You'd expect, and that's probably what we are expecting as well. But it is, as we said, like a really good celebration of Pacific Island rugby, a good thing to have as a showcase in Eden Park in advance of the World Cup. Obviously, and just a good hit out for all these sides, which they need in advance of it as well. The PNC was great, but now you still need to keep the guys primed and ready to go into the World Cup.
Consistent hit outs of this variety can't be a bad thing.
Yeah, for sure. The only instance in which it is when big key men go down injured, which is what we've been obviously, that's been a big talking point on World Cup warm-ups in the Northern Hemisphere, obviously, because they're just not competitive games, so it's more heightened in that sense. But it's it's as damaging for these teams, if not
If
more
not
so,
more, if not
because
more.
they're lean on key men more.
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
So that's the only danger, but otherwise it's a really good thing, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so too. Before we... we're going to talk about now France against Italy, which is another game happening. It's actually happening on Friday evening in the Stade de France.
Yeah.
The sides are named ahead of this one. France obviously coming off... I would say ultimately, despite the loss last week, they won't be too concerned.
Yeah, I don't think their confidence is dented by it too much.
It's a good 2-match series with Scotland to open them up. They're playing nice attacking footy. I thought Guitoun, who came into the side after a pull-out from Fofana, played lovely football. Yeah. He cut through the Scots on a couple of occasions.
For one occasion for the second of Pinot's tries, was excellent. Just carved them.
Had some really lovely touches to his game.
Yeah.
He is the ultimate attacking 13, a great link man between inside and outside, and a very, very smart operator. And to see him in there now with Fofana, that's
you've been salivating about the potential.
That's what we're looking for.
What we're looking for with this French team is really a Clermont-Toulouse hybrid.
Yeah,
and you can see if that centre partnership is exactly it. It's the best of both worlds, and same with their halfbacks. With obviously this week they're running with Entimac, but
Lopez generally
Dupont and Lopez as a I just like that line throughout the whole team of Toulouse, Clermont, and with a few exceptional players from other, like I think Aldrit is Camille Chat as well. But by and large, that's what we're going with. And I like that because it's evidence based, it's form based, and it's really looking at the top tours this year. It's undeniable. Like those were the two champion teams who are on another level. And it's right and proper that the France team is reflecting that. Finally, it hasn't been the case for 4 years since the last World Cup, but it seems they are actually picking the right team and playing the right kind of rugby, and that's why it was a good hit out. Both hit outs against Scotland were good.
It's a different but still pretty strong side this week. Obviously Entimac getting the shout at 10 with that great centre partnership, Dupont sticking on at 9 and actually is there as 10 cover as
there's
well.
no 10 on the bench, so Dupont being shifted to 10 is something that they'll be looking to try, because with the 31-man squad in mind, I think they do have that as a third choice option.
He's a proper option for sure. The back row is a little slower. Fiku's getting a go on the wing as the ultimate utility back that he is.
That tells me what I read into that is that they're picking a load of centres to target Italy's centres, because Italy's centres tend to be porous.
Going to flood the midfield as they did against Scotland, very likely. And they've gone for a different but very hefty pack with Camara and Larry and Pickamo in the back row. Itoria and Taufi Fanua is a huge lock partnership, and that actually is probably their strongest front row of Poirot, Shat and Slimani. Certainly their strongest scrum that they could possibly assemble at all. So I think they're going to be targeting Italy in terms of the scrum up front. They're going to be looking to get a bit of offence going. Obviously Entimac at 10 for me hasn't really convinced.
No.
But that centre partnership is great. They're probably going to flood that channel full of players.
Fiku off his wing.
Get some offloading going, and then if they're just winning contacts with that huge pack, it could be a very long night at the Stade de France for the Italians.
Like the Italians are coming off running in 84 points, 85 points against an admittedly a pretty pathetic Russian opposition, but it's still an unprecedented result for Italy. Italy aren't used to
52 points more than the Jersey Reds managed.
This is true. So Italy are comprehensively better than the Jersey Reds, we can decide.
I think so.
But this Italy side are much improved, and it was a good positive thing for them to even just put the ball through the hands a few times and execute some plays. It's something that they don't really get a chance to do as often in the Six Nations, even though we are very much on the line that they have improved under Conor O'Shea. On the last 3 years, they've definitely improved.
There are some proper personnel in there, and actually they've gone for more or less their full side in this one. Zani and Ruzan in the lock partnership, and that back row of Bramstein, Pelledri and Sergio Parise.
With Negri off the bench.
Parise keeping Negri out of a jersey is actually questionable.
It is rather on form, but he is still
captain fantastic,
and he's bringing them to the World Cup, so I can't begrudge it. And the fact that they have that kind of impact in the back row off the bench is also a marked improvement on where their side has been.
And Negri is such a physical presence that he does come on and make an impact. And they're getting things right elsewhere. I mean, I was a little frustrated with Conor O'Shea, sticking with McKinley despite no evidence being that he can really play at this level, and then doing goofy things at 9 when Tito Tebaldi is their best 9. They've fixed that. They've got more or less their best team, Tito and Tommy Allen. They do have Marisi and Campagnaro who can attack, but they can't defend. in the centre partnership with a pretty potent back three of Minozzi, Bellini and Hayward.
Yeah.
It's as good as they can assemble. They can get plays off.
And even on the bench they have Carlo Canna and Benvenuti, who's more of a physical presence in the centre than probably Campanaro, but less of a flair one. So you can change that up if it's all going leaking tries in the midfield.
It's just defensively especially. It's not a team that's going to be able to cope with what France bring, especially in the Stade de France.
One area that we've been constantly noting, and it's been a recurring theme in the Six Nations, is that you don't even know that their defensive system can't cover or shut things down, because you're not even getting to that point. They're just missing tackles. Like nothing to do with defensive system. They're just missing straight up tackles and leaking tries that way, and that has been a recurring theme. They've slightly improved. Like it was curtailed a bit this year, but still it rears its ugly head in moments.
It's
in games.
Not a backline in particular. Maybe the solution is to move Pelledri and Bramstein into the centres defensively
to help out.
But it's certainly not but even with that big French pack, they're going to be sucked in because they're just going to
have to do the work.
Narrow. Then the loose forwards get sucked in, and then spread out.
Centres flooded with Fiku, Gatun and Fofana all running at them from different angles, and you're like, ugh.
And don't you know Maynard will be the guy to get the touchdown?
Probably. Or while they're all watching all of that.
But exactly, and it's just the way that backline is, just height wise and physical wise. Even if they do make their tackles, they're not for winning collisions against just about anybody, and the French just love to offload and they love to run off each other, and they have a very sophisticated mindset in terms of attacking rugby. They can execute plays in the narrowest of space, and I only see this going one way, which is France. Lots of points in Italy, not quite so many.
Not
points.
as many at all. Like judging by that Scotland performance, that was a very impressive way to open their World Cup season, I suppose, into it, and Italy aren't on Scotland's level, and not even on defence. They're not even, and Scotland are pretty porous through the centres as well. Similar weaknesses, but not on. Like Italy are still a lesser side, and I expect France to kind of click and maybe do a bit of a demolition job on them in France, which is it's exactly what you would expect. It's what the bookies are going to read. It is tried and true, but it is a good hit out for both teams. I think. I think Italy need to start getting into a headspace where they know they're going to be facing the All Blacks and South Africa and not Russia.
They're going to put themselves in as good a position as they can to compete in those games, as they have with this team ahead of this game. But personnel wise, they're just not going to be quite at the level at all. It's unfortunate for them.
It is a little.
But I think we both predict France by lots.
France by quite a lot. Yes. I'm thinking 30 to 40 points, maybe even 50.
Yeah, I'd say
40. I'm hopeful that Italy get a few tries.
I was thinking
off.
40 to 20 kind of.
Yeah, that could be it. Could be it. It's obviously it's a new backline for France. We haven't seen it. You were calling for Gatun, Fofana in the centres for quite a while.
I would hope that they go well. Obviously, it could be tampered somewhat by the service that Ntamack gives. He does stand a little deeper, and he does tend to just sort of have defenders drift off him. But those guys are so potent; they're going to just cause damage. Yeah. Both of them very good offloaders, very good runners, pick very good lines. That's just, and along with that marauding giant pack, save for some very bad errors or some Herculean efforts from the likes of Pelledri and Stein, you can't see Italy surviving long against those odds. So I think France comfortably.
I would agree, for sure. And I suppose we'll move on. We just have a few other games to kind of briefly mention before we get into the news segment. Obviously, I have to say, I watched it. Leinster travelled over to Canada to play Canada in a World Cup warm-up game, and just about got the win with a last gasp try, 38-35. That being said, it wasn't as tight as all that. Harry Byrne came on at 60 minutes at 10 for Leinster when they were comfortably 3 scores ahead, and conceded one charge down try from his own 22, and then shortly after an intercept that led to a try, and then Canada did string a few passes together and score a worldie to try to take the lead, but then Leinster kind of just switched their game heads on again, having gone asleep, and then just diligently went through phases and took the game away from Canada. It was disappointing from Canada's point of view to see how a Leinster side that we know quite well, but it was like it's a Pro 14/BNI Cup level squad. Like it's
not even Pro 14,
all the internationals. Like if we were to name that team in a Pro 14 game against the likes of Scarlets, I think we'd lose that game. Whereas they were comfortably like 2 to 3 scores better than that Canada team for the whole game, with the exception of 2 horrendous errors that gifted momentum and allowed them to nearly nick it. But Canada having very little control over the outcome in that way, whereas it was just It was as soon as Leinster decided they wanted to play and win the game, they did, and took it away from them.
Yeah.
Couple that with the fact that I thought the ref wasn't entirely on our side by the end, but I think that was our own doing. We annoyed him. But yeah, no, it was an interesting little hit out. Canada, you have this running theory that Canada are probably the worst team in the tournament this far. Well, they're in competition with Russia for that title.
Yeah.
Russia obviously having come through a curious backdoor route into the World Cup. They're the only team not there fully on merit. But Canada are still this Canada side are much weaker than pretty much any Canada side that's gone to a World Cup before.
Yeah,
it's disappointing.
Canada obviously all over the shop. Leinster not particularly impressive, but just causing them problems. I mean, guys running through Canadian tackles, like they were struggling to deal with the likes of Kieran Frawley. They're going to be facing Bowden Barrett. They're going to be facing Andre Pollard. They're going to be facing just the scores that the All Blacks and the Springboks are going to put on this Canada team is to be feared. You could see 90 to 100 points there, like defensively all over the place, not physical. Not really a presence in attack. Tend to kick the ball away when it's in their half pretty tamely and inaccurately. It's just going to invite try after try after try, even against the likes of Italy, I dare say.
Considering the fact as well that you make the good point with the 10s, but in the 12 channel, like Conor O'Brien is a good positive academy prospect for Leinster. He's a big lad, a horseman man. He carried short pretty much all day, and they could not win a contact against him. And I'm saying, like, that's going to be Sonny Bill in the World Cup. That's going to be Sonny Bill or Delindy or Am. You're just like, no, they're not going to contain any of it.
No.
Any of it at all.
So Canada are very much not at the level, and it's going to be a torturous World Cup for them. As you alluded to, the competition for Canada in terms of worst team in the tournament is the Russians, who have in Moscow suffered a rather ignominious defeat at the hands of the championship side, the Jersey Reds. The wee island of Jersey getting one up on the nation of Russia.
Well, as Leinster fans, I'm delighted with that. The two Leinster and the Jersey Reds getting the wins as the club teams. That's good. But in Moscow, you would have thought that Russia could string more together than that.
It was weird because earlier in the year they did manage to go and get a win against Uruguay.
Germany as well. They played in Rugby Europe. They got a win against.
They went to play that goofy championship in South America. And they actually managed to get a couple of wins and a couple of narrow defeats. Tournament that also involved Namibia, and I was just thinking, maybe they're building to something, but that result is obviously just
coupled with the Italy game from the other week, which we saw, where there was just a whole lot of really terrible plays.
There were some passive plays, like just not committing to it, dropping the ball out of nowhere, defensively just looking disinterested. Another side for whom a long World Cup is coming. In terms of previews, just there are a couple of tier 2 games as well. This weekend, Uruguay are playing Brazil, which is a good clash for them. Brazil obviously not in the World Cup, but they have a great scrum. They are a promising team. Uruguay too are very promising. They play a lovely brand of
similar to Argentina or the Jaguares. They're just a bit smaller.
It's indeed, it's aggressive attacking footy from Uruguay. They're probably in for a long World Cup as well, just on account of their group being no games off, no slacking. It's just a horror show. Every game is just a horror show.
Every game's a mismatch for them. They're going to be bullied by Georgia, and then in a different way they're
outrun
by Fiji.
And then Wales and Australia. Like, good luck. But Uruguay are actually a pretty cool team, and they'll get, even in the World Cup they'll get some plays,
get some tries for sure, because they play with that ambition, which is great.
So they're going to get a hit out against Brazil, which is obviously good for their World Cup ambitions.
1 o'clock on Saturday in Irish time. That's going to be in Montevideo,
capital of Uruguay. And Namibia are playing against the ever faithful and lovely Southern Kings.
Much credit has to go to the Southern Kings for what they're doing. They're flying around bailing tier 2 teams out in terms of their World Cup prep. It's great because they do play with ambition and throw the ball around. And it's really, really great stuff from the Southern Kings. And they're giving Namibia a game, which is good because I'm going to try and get a stream of it.
We have to see Namibia play before the World Cup.
Is it are they contenders for the worst side in it, with up there with Russia and Canada, or are they a bit better than that?
I have a definite theory that they're going to beat Canada. I'd be very disappointed. Even looking at Namibia sides, through the World Cup years, they've been slowly getting better and better and better. And they were at their best in the last World Cup, and they are quite physical. And Canada can't handle any physicality. So I just think, they should be at the level. It's definitely good for them to get a hit out beforehand. out in Windhoek. I'm curious to see what kind of crowd they get out there, if the public are behind them at all. But they've got a game against the Southern Kings, and that's going to be great. I'm happy.
I'm just curious to get some tape on them, maybe. I have no idea. Like, obviously, there's no Burger, so we know that. But what's in his place? Is it going to be a marauding physical pack that may shock some of the other teams in their pool?
The only team is Italy,
Italy, but otherwise, I don't know, like Canada. I don't know.
Those teams in that All Black Springbok group just have no fun. They can't even theorise about beating one of the Tier 1 sides. It's just
not going to happen.
It's all about beating Canada for Namibia, I think.
For sure. But and it starts here with the game against Southern Kings. So
it does indeed.
That's those games both happening on Saturday, and both very worthwhile fixtures as well in the context of the World Cup. So I suppose if there's nothing else to say on that, we'll move on to the news of the week. And there was quite a bit of news this week.
There's a load of news. Obviously we haven't shot in a while, but it's just packed full of rugby news, so we're obviously going to just do our best to hit through them as best we can. The first bit of news was obviously a massive story last week. Fiji Janti apparently tested positive for a banned substance, test taken in June. He released a statement saying, he's not a cheat, he fully doesn't believe it, he wants his B sample tested. He was saying he actually got tested a fortnight before and a fortnight after, and his tests came up clean. He's not a cheat, he doesn't believe he's a cheat.
He's scratching his head.
He's passed loads and loads of ones. He seems to be scratching his head as to how it got in its system. And it's one of those ones where, again, as with any athlete where this comes up, it is hard to know. His statements seem genuine, but so do a lot of guys who lie about this.
I remember Lance Armstrong was very convincing.
Lance Armstrong was extremely convincing. He was a wonderful liar. He was really good at just lying to camera. Maybe that's what Afi was doing. I'd like to think not.
I will give benefit of the doubt. I like due process and innocent until proven guilty and all that. And Razzie's come out and thrown water on it a bit as well, saying like, no, he's been injured. That's the reason he's not been involved. This is obviously an ongoing investigation, but it's not been that. It's been the injury that's been keeping him out and has ultimately kept him out of the squad. Which the bad news ultimately is that Afi Janti, who's one of the most exciting wingers in the world, is not going to the World Cup. That is the main headline from it, you would think. But obviously, the drugs thing is one of those things. If a guy at that level can be taking drugs and is taking drugs and is still managing to pass all but one of his tests, that's almost the bigger concern. If that's what's happening, then you would think that it's just everywhere in South Africa at least. But it was a South African body that flagged them. It wasn't World Rugby. It was a South African sporting body that flagged it, and they get tested all the time, and nobody else has come up positive. So it could be an anomaly. I would be very, very surprised though if Afi Janti was by himself the only guy taking drugs. If he is taking drugs, they probably all are. But if it's just as likely that he isn't. But we don't know. But that was a huge story last week, and it only broke last week. So we'll keep abreast of it as things develop, if they do at all. But in the meantime, that was the story. And I suppose sticking with contentious stuff in South Africa.
All of those positive rugby on-field headlines had to be countered with some negative off-field headlines.
And Evan Etzebeth, big man, was accused of racism and assault based on a very odd scratchy video taken at 3 a.m. outside some place.
I really tried to figure this one out. Razzie stood by him, and Etzebeth himself released a very nice message. I don't actually have it here. I wish I did. I could read it. It was like a very positive Nation, saying like he's one of the big advocates and believers of the Rainbow Nation. He hates the idea of racism and abhors white racism in the country. What the accusation is that he was using racial slurs and assaulting some homeless guy. The video that I saw, it was pretty hard to make out in the dark. Etzebeth seemed to be just standing in the background with like his hands in his pockets and a goofy
seemingly locked
at 3 a.m. with like a goofy expression on his head while some other people were screaming stuff at a homeless dude. That was all I could really make out of it, and he seems to think, no, that wasn't what I was doing at all. Like, he was very swift in his response, which was not sort of a, this is out of character for me, I would never do such a thing. It was a, this didn't happen at all, what you're saying is false. I'm not like that, that's not me, and I didn't do that. And Rassie's like, I'm satisfied with that. It doesn't. I don't think he did.
I think I am too. I'll take the man at his word for sure. And then based on the video I saw no wrongdoing from him at all, other than maybe being a bit too locked. But but
you know what? They're fucking rugby championship champions,
Plus, we're Irish. We can glass house not to be throwing stones in terms of being too locked. But so that was obviously another bit of controversy to leak from the camp. But they handled it very well, I thought.
How good is Razzie at everything, by the way?
Seemingly great.
Just handling things like pouring cold water on fires left, right, and centre, while also making just this great rugby team.
We may stick with that with South Africa then, and just really let the thing, because the other thing they did was announce their 31-man squad. Which is great. Obviously, it's a few surprises.
They had not really. No. They had whittled it down to 32, and the guy who missed out was Elstad. That's not that surprising. I was rooting for him because he's had a great season for Toulouse. But it felt like he was on the back foot, same as Marcel could see, just on the back foot for being just out of that loop. And we had to do something gargantuan, like prove that he's a viable number 8 option or something, but he never had the chance. And, he did get a game or two, and he just wasn't as impressive. I thought Quagga Smith actually was pretty impressive against the All Blacks.
Yeah, for sure. So it's justifiable.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah, that is the way it goes. And with a depth of talent this much, there's always going to be some world-class players not making the plane, and he's one of them. I think he's great.
Kobus Reinach, as third scrum half, has been in some scratchy form, and it means that they're only bringing 2 10s, so he's probably one of the more contentious ones. But that said, Francois Steyn can cover 10, so I think they were always going to bring 3 scrum halves, which was always going to be Kobus Reinach. So it's an entirely unsurprising squad, and an awesome squad.
Potentially a World Cup winning squad. It certainly got all the hallmarks of it.
Might be the most talented anyway, just in terms of raw talent and all the positions.
Awesome. Formidable, I would say. And I suppose in other news as well, in other South African news, to stick with them, Felix Jones has joined up to fill the kind of void left by Swiss De Bruyne, who dropped out of his role for personal reasons, unspecified, but we won't go into conjecture on it. And Felix Jones obviously had been working with Razzie in Munster before Razzie got the call up. Someone who Razzie always seems to like and seems to vibe off.
It's a bit of a weird one, because we've obviously been quite critical of Munster's attack, which was his primary responsibility, and he wasn't applying a lot of shape or anything, any real structure to that attack, and he was actually squandering the resources he had there. But Razzie, who has not put a foot wrong in any department since he's taken the job in South Africa, has always liked Felix Jones, and actually offered him, when he first came across to the Buck job, a skills coach role, which Felix at the time turned down to stick with Munster
as an attack coach,
which
is a distinction with difference. Of course.
For sure, it's a bigger job, and that's actually the reason that he left Munster, was because they were going to whittle down his job to a more skills coachy job and get in another attack coach in Stephen Larkin, who is in there now in the job. So it's probably interesting. I don't think he's going to do too much damage. I think there's a reason that Razzie wants him in the camp. He obviously has 1 or 2 nuggets, or maybe it's just as simple as Razzie likes bouncing ideas off him.
Could be. It's a different voice. It's a new voice. There's no harm in that. There are a few teams doing some similar things in advance of the World Cup. Obviously, we were talking last week about France and their de facto coach now. But
Fabien Galtier.
Fabien Galtier. But then in other news as well, Jim Mallinder, formerly of Northampton, has joined up with Scotland as a performance director as well. So that's actually less of a in the squad role and more of a part of Scotland Rugby. So he's going to be looking across the whole of Scotland Rugby, club sides, underage sides, domestic rugby, youth rugby, everything. And I think it's a reasonable get. I think he's a smart guy. I think so. I think he's also due for some good times, some greener pastures than what Northampton were offering him
it's a larger scale job than just coaching a team, and probably one that's going to suit him. I think. He has a cool head on his shoulders, and I think it's quietly quite a positive acquisition for Scottish rugby.
I would say so. What else have we got?
Well, we'll talk about the Aussies named their World Cup squad as well. What was interesting was that Jordan Pataya was bolted in, who obviously we've been talking about. He's been out with injury. He's missing the Samoa game as well. There's obviously Cheika just thinks this guy is incredible. He hasn't played any Test rugby. He's not going to play their last warm-up game against Samoa, so he's going to come into the squad as cold as you can. And we'll see what happens.
In a tough pool, like a pool where they don't have many games off to be throwing.
That's it. He's not going to be. That's the thing. I was going to say he's not going to be starting. You have your starters of Karevi and James O'Connor in that centre who have that locked down. But it is a tougher one when you've got 3 serious games. Georgia and Fiji are serious games. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And so
Wales, obviously.
There is going to have to be a bit of squad rotation in there.
Sure.
So he very likely will have to play, or at least come off the bench in one of those games.
He'll probably start against Uruguay.
But that's fine. But there is another. They are going to have. They can't play their full team in those 3 games, more than likely. No. So it's going to be interesting for sure. Yeah. David Pocock came in as well. Obviously, he's a bit cold, but they're wrapping him in cotton wool, and he is going to be key to their chances. A key man for sure. Like, they want him back on the pitch and impacting games the way he has been. And other than that, it's essentially the same side that we have had. There was no bolting Scott Farley call, and there was no bolting Will Skelton call, despite rumours.
And still Quaid's exclusion is still questionable, but it's all moot now because the squad's named. It's all finalised. No more of that spin.
No, they're finding a rhythm with the squad that they have. Yeah. Sort of like England. We're putting the good stuff to bed, and they're just. We'll see what they can come up with, and do postmortems when it's all over.
It's all over, for sure. Yeah. But Pattaya is definitely, it's an interesting one. I'll be curious to see how he goes, because it's rare to see a bolter who hasn't, we just have very little tape on him. Yeah, he's untested.
A young 19-year-old kid who's been injured for most of the year. Who everyone is just raving about, and you got to respect it. You got to respect. A part of it is definitely the fact that there isn't a huge amount of depth. Where a guy like that is being forced out of the squad by the sheer competition. You just don't have that in Australia. Yeah. But also it's chucking talent in there for talent's sake, which you can't fault it. It's something Australia always want to do. So maybe he shows up and tears it up.
I don't know, but we'd be definitely curious to see how he goes. He is definitely the big takeaway from the squad, which is otherwise quite predictable in terms of how it went.
In further World Cup news, obviously the All Blacks just today and Wednesday, as we're talking, have selected their World Cup squad, and it's got its talking points.
I would say exclusions. Lemap being left out is causing a bit of a buzz, but I'm kind of inclined to agree with it.
The 4 centres that they've picked, probably on balance, make more sense. I mean, maybe you could argue he's a little better than Goodhue, but he's not a 13 and Goodhue is, so it's kind of moot. Yeah. The 2 12s who are ahead of him are Sonny Bill and Ryan Crotty, and it's like, can you argue with that?
Yeah, I think he's a really good ball carrier, but he doesn't look very All Black in that he doesn't look to pass from 12, which is something that they do.
No, and Sonny Bill is the difference that he's made just coming into the team and offloading. Yeah. It just changes everything. Sonny Bill's offloads are otherworldly, and they just break up a defence no matter how tough you are. Yeah. You can put 3 men on that guy, he's going to get the ball away.
Yeah. It's crazy. He's octopus limbs. He's got a touch of the Leone Nakarawas about him.
Phenomenon. And Ryan Crotty is one of the smartest operators out there. Yeah. Are you really leaving him out? No, he's fit. He goes. Yeah. And Lemap is the unlucky guy to miss out. I actually thought that the back row was a bigger talking point. Bringing 3 open sides and presumably converting already now to 6. Mm-hmm. It's a ballsy. And only
leaving out the likes of Frizzell, and
Shannon Frizzell, Via Fifita, Liam Squire. All out of there, and for the sake of Luke Jacobson, who has played no rugby.
1 cap, has he?
1 cap he's got, but he has played no rugby. He hasn't been part of their rugby championship plans, but is suddenly very much a part of their World Cup plans. So hard to know what to make of it. I'm delighted to see Patrick Tuipulotu get in there
as the row.
In the row.
And he really did that based on that. Was it Bledisloe that he did that in? Or was it?
That was the second Bledisloe test that he was just phenomenal. Just changed the game in the second row. And I tell you what, with Sam Whitelock struggling for form, Scott Barrett's last contribution in the jersey was a
game-losing red card.
Indeed. and Brodie Retallick now, according to Steve Hansen, out until the quarter-finals. Patrick Tuipulotu becomes a very important player and probably a guy you start in your big games.
He's take on your physical. He's that physical, and this All Black side have emphasised the physical more in this cycle than most others. So a guy like Tuipulotu is one.
If you're without Brodie Retallick and you want to match those Bok locks for physicality, Tuipulotu is probably your best bet right now.
For sure. So he's from relative obscurity and on the outskirts. He's one who's bolted in now, which is great. That's been a good development. That Bledisloe test was really seminal for this All Black team's chances. And
it's interesting that they've named just 2 10s. It was probably predictable, but what's interesting about it is that there's every chance that both of those guys are going to be starting the big games. So if they pick up a couple of injuries, all of a sudden you're doing something goofy like putting Jordy Barrett in the 10 shirt very quickly.
Aaron Smith,
there is that.
TJ at 10.
They're all little halfbacks.
Yeah,
it's got to be Geordie Barrett,
Yeah.
and he's really not a 10. So it's definitely a risk because they're going to be starting Moong at 10 and Barrett at 15. The two of them could go down. You don't know. They could go down in one play.
Yeah.
But I guess those are just the calls you have to make when you're assembling 31 men.
Yeah, for sure. But that is an interesting little dynamic to it. Obviously, they have more predictable stuff out wide. Ben Smith did make it in. He was dropped for the last game, but he's still in the squad.
I didn't think he was going to be out of the squad.
No, I didn't.
But I don't think he's in the jersey right now.
No, I don't think so.
I think it's Barrett at fullback, and I think it's Seven
Reece. What will happen is he's going to start at fullback for some games. He's going to start for some pool games. They're going to rest because they're only bringing Barrett.
I think second choice fullback is Geordie Barrett.
Yeah, maybe.
I think Ben Smith's in trouble. I don't think he's playing well.
Yeah.
I think he'll be there as some winger cover, but probably won't get a lot of games.
Maybe not.
To be honest.
Maybe not. But yeah, he made the plane anyway. Maybe.
Tear up Canada. That's fine.
Yeah.
But
they can pick any combination. They could be picking Tui Piloto at fullback and probably tear up Canada.
And how they would do that.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of World Cup housekeeping as well. Canada have got Graham Henry to try and I don't know what in a month. I mean, it feels very late to be doing that.
He's going to have them catch pass. Maybe he'll find some little playmaker that they haven't been picking and say pick him at 15 or something. But
they're not going to do that. Like he's literally Canada have been decent at getting plays off when they've been out of games.
Yeah, they start throwing the ball around.
A few nice consolation tries. I think the focus is going to be on getting them to play like that from minutes 1 to 80. Just throw the ball around, have a bit of fun. Yeah. You're not going to win anyway.
So stop playing some depressing, slow, attritional kicking. They try to play in such an attritional way, which is baffling when you see how deficient their locks are in physicality. Like they lose every contact, and you're just like, wait, why are you playing a slow, physical
throw the ball
kicking
around,
game?
Boys. Yeah, you can catch teams out if you throw the ball around.
As we've often thought of, like the best chance a tier 2 side has of getting a scalp, which is illustrated by the Japan example last time round, is to play with width and speed and catch them cold. Try to go for tries.
Because if you catch a team with a few tries, like as much as I like Georgia, and Georgia's best read definitely isn't that. It is to control the game. It is harder to catch a team cold for 80 minutes than it is for 10.
Yes.
And that's what you can do. You can win a game in 10 to 15 minutes if you can catch a team cold and grab a few tries.
Yeah.
That's where the task for Georgia becomes a lot harder because they're trying to attrition
suffocate a team for 80 minutes.
But they actually have the pack to maybe stand up and do it, where Canada just makes no sense at all.
No.
So Graham Henry will likely resolve that for them, and then just some injury. The French Paul Gabriag, who we had said it was out for the World Cup, has appealed his decision somewhat successful. He's got it reduced to he'd just be missing the Argentina game, so he becomes a very viable World Cup option.
Which is interesting from World Rugby. It's a very kind of forgiving little result for him. Maybe
it was a
pretty nasty
clean
to be doing, and it was maybe warranted that he'd blown his World Cup in that effort.
Yeah, maybe he still has, because Taufi Fanu is getting a go for them. They've got Felix Lambie, Van Mahina. I know you're not a fan, but they're not going to drop him.
No, I know.
So there are locks who could take over there, but more than likely, I think this will mean he'll come to the World Cup. So he's kind of got away with one there
for sure.
In terms of injuries, Sam Skinner from Scotland, we mentioned earlier, out for the World Cup. Tim Swinson has been brought in as cover.
Yes.
I like Tim Swinson.
I like him a lot. I think he's a bit of a workhorse. I think he does a lot. The
good for Sam Skinner, obviously.
Yeah,
he was actually played really well.
Had a great game last week. Yeah, no, it's such a shame. But the chat is that Richie Gray should have got in, but I have very little evidence to support that. I actually think Swinson's probably a slightly stronger player than him.
Yeah, it's fine.
So I think it's fine. Then there was other news as well.
Mako Vunipola has had a positive prognosis in terms of his World Cup chances. They said it was just a cut to some scar tissue, so that they think will heal up. He'll be alright. And then but Jack Noel, who hasn't played since the Premiership final, having been named in the squad, Rob Baxter, Exeter's coach, came out and said that he's touch and go 50-50 for actually making the play, which I'm surprised to hear. I didn't know that it was that bad. So
it's unfortunate for him. There was more positive prognosis for Joey Carberry, however, which is now being updated to suggest that maybe he'll be fit in time for the first game, fitting back before the play, which is good, because compared to the prognosis initially, was that maybe he'd be missing the first 2 games, which are the 2 seminal games for Ireland, which is what makes it so risky to name him on it. if he's progressing a bit faster, it's a bit less risky. Probably bad news for Ross Byrne and Jack Carty.
I still think they'll bring 3.
They'll have to based on this injury. You can't risk it. But yeah, that's good, positive Irish news. Then in other vaguely Irish news, Connacht are going to be playing a warm-up game against Russia on September 7th.
I have nothing but respect and love for the club sides who go out away to these Tier 2 sides to play games.
Yeah.
It's a great decision from Connacht. More club sides to do it. I know it's expensive and can be time consuming, but
I think it's a better hit out than most of the pre-season games you see.
Totally, it's also an event. It's an event to play a national side.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah.
And the players enjoy it and the fans enjoy it, and actually the Tier 2 sides who you're playing kind of need it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's good all round, and I'm excited for Connacht to put 50 on.
I'm hopeful
the
for
hapless Russians.
Yeah. Because that's been the buzz so far. But yeah, so that's going to be happening on September 7th. And then just one other bit of news in terms of transfer. I think Saracens pick up Damien Willemse on loan to help with their, obviously, World Cup shoring a little bit. But Willemse is a pretty hefty dude. He's certainly not going to affect their heft in the pack, is he? There's another big man coming to Saracens. And
Damien Willemse at the 10.
Oh, sorry, Damien Willemse. Okay, sorry, I'm picturing someone else. Damien Willemse.
You picture Paul Willemse, the French South African lock.
Yes.
No, Damien Willemse, the 10, who was unlucky through injury, the Stormers lad,
right,
to not make the South African squad, and probably would have if he wasn't injured. They probably would have brought 3 10s.
He was in contention with that little mix of Yankees, Kerwin Bosch and himself were kind of all around a similar level, and injury obviously got in his way.
So he's going to be off to Saracens. I think primarily as World Cup cover. Primarily as World Cup cover. But he's going to be going and doing that.
For sure, which is pretty positive news. Was there any other transfer news that I thought was relevant? No, I think not.
I think we're good. I think we're good.
So then, with that, the Curry Cup has also been going on.
Oh, excuse me. We haven't been updating our Curry Cup. We have to talk about the Curry Cup.
Yeah, well, now I think the regular season is finished.
It is indeed.
And for the first time is it the first time ever that they were saying that the Blue Bulls and Western Province miss out on the postseason in the Curry Cup, which is crazy to think. The two powerhouses of it, and the Bulls in particular are in a bit of a relegation battle with the Pumas.
Well, they just about escaped.
Yeah.
And so the regular season has wrapped up, and the Cheetahs have actually ended up top of the table. They're going to be taking on the Sharks in Bloemfontein this weekend in the first semi-final. Actually, it's the second semi-final, and the first semi-final between the Golden Lions and the Griquas. And crucially, the Lions have managed to just eke a point ahead of the Griquas,
which gives them home advantage and altitude advantage.
Both the home sides have altitude advantage, which would lead me to believe that that's going to be 2 home wins and a Lions Cheetahs final.
Likely. Although the Sharks are
scrappy dudes,
and they managed to get the win away from home against the Bulls.
You were writing them off a couple of weeks into this tournament. They always have their ways.
No, I was writing the Pumas off.
But for sure the home advantage in altitude is such an advantage that I think that it's likely that we're looking at a Cheetahs Lions final. Just on a sour note from that competition, the Jaguares 15 who've been in there are about to win the B competition.
They've racked up a bonus point in every single one of their fixtures thus far, and just swatted aside
122 points one week and 80 something another week. They've been incredible, but something that I wasn't aware of is that they're actually forbidden from playing in the top tier competition because South Africa are being protective of it as the traditional 80-year-old tournament that it is. But I just think it's a shame. I think it would have been nice to invite them in, and that's what I thought.
I also think it, as much as you'd fear that it would cheapen the South African element of the main competition, there's some element of meritocracy has to come in. The other side is it now renders the B competition or the tier 2 level of the Curry Cup a bit moot or a bit pointless because they have been comprehensively at another level to all of these guys, and if they're invited in to play, I thought it was fair enough that maybe they'd be there for the first season, have to earn their way up, but then once they do, they're straight into Curry Cup. That seems to not be the case. They're kind of ring-fenced out of it, which means that should they turn up every year, I'd expect the results to be the same. You're just going to be looking at
it becomes more pointless endeavour for them. which is a shame.
Yeah.
The Top Couture, just to finally finish up this show, the Top Couture got
underway.
Some interesting enough results there. Racing losing at home against newly promoted Bayonne, who I root for. I love Bayonne. Old school, classy.
That was the other. I'll just tack it onto this. Diaz Benicia has gone to Racing.
Oh,
that was the other transfer
news.
Yeah. But yes, he wasn't there in time to save them this time. But it's obviously bad news for the Jaguares and good news for Racing. They get
especially Diaz Benicia, having missed out on the Argentinian squad, can come straight in there and be Finn Russell's replacement. So that's
which is obviously the thought behind the signing. I'd imagine.
Yeah. So Racing obviously with a rough start. Stade also losing 43-9 away in Lyon is a rough start.
Yeah.
Toulouse, shorn of their French internationals, lost away in Bordeaux, and Clermont, in a repeat of the Challenge Cup final, had too much in the tank for Ronan O'Gara's La Rochelle.
Yeah, so his first hit out, albeit away from home, was a predictable loss to Clermont.
The Minor 10 Cup was also going on. Wins for Hawke's Bay, Wellington, Tasman, Auckland, Waikato, Taranaki, and North Harbour.
Right.
So that's it. I think
that's
we're
pretty
going to
much
wrap up that show. That's just about all the rugby that was going on in the world.
Rugby that's going on. Obviously, it's tinged with disappointment from an Irish perspective based on last week.
It definitely hurts.
It
definitely hurts.
Left us a little less enthused, more sour. But we'll try and overcome that a little for the sake of the show.
It's a quieter week. It's all buzzing towards that World Cup. It is the last show that we'll do in the month that isn't a Rugby World Cup month until after the World Cup. Get excited, folks.
If you can get your head around that little phrasing.
That little sentence. Yes. It makes sense if you pick your way through it.
Yes.
Great communication there.
Yeah.
I podcast.
Don't you know? We're podcasters. Before we get too silly, which is wont to happen at the end of these things, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please do like, comment, subscribe, bell, and all that. Share, all of that stuff. Otherwise, thank you very much for sticking around, and we'll see you next week for more rugby.
Indeed. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Alright, you're up. He's getting in the mode. Well, it's pure Cronin overthrow.
Didn't jump high enough.
Oh, and another one. Gift and Cow and Dickey tries here.